worked a single day in a K-12 setting. 23 years. You have to be a lawyer to be the Attorney General. You have to have worked in mines, I think, for 3 years to be the state mine inspector. But anybody can be the Arizona Superintendent of Public Instruction, and it shows. Because what we've seen over the last 23 years with this systematic dismantling of our public schools and a lack of leadership or failed leadership from the state level, including from the superintendent's office, they have not only worked to dismantle our public school system, they've dismantled the Department of Education. This is a department that represents, in theory, the largest portion of our state budget, yet our superintendent of public instruction now, and John Huppenthal before her, and Tom Horn before that, they have basically shoved out the door all the best qualified people from the department. In fact, today, if you talk to someone who's worked in the Department of Education, they'll tell you about Hatchet Fridays, where on Fridays they march out anybody with a doctorate or a master's degree in education. Because Diane Douglas doesn't want to have people smarter than her telling her what to do at the Department of Education. It's time for a change. It's time for us to change directions in this state. I've seen it since I was a kid. I'm born and raised in the state. 4 generations of my family have lived here, and we have seen this systematic dismantling. Before 1990, believe it or not, many of you have come here since that time. Before 1990, Arizona was not the way it is today. We were above the national average of per pupil spending before 1990. In 1990, we dropped below the national average for the first time in Arizona history. 10 years later, in 2000, Arizona's college attainment rates dropped below the national average for the first time in Arizona history. The folks at the legislature, and Diane Douglas and Doug Busey, they don't think those two things are connected. They don't think there is a connection between a drop in per pupil spending and a drop in college attainment rates. They don't think that there is a connection between these things. It's time for a change. Do you agree with that? I think it's past due. I think it's past due. You know, the last thing I want to tell you about, I serve today on the Tempe City Council. After I left the legislature and served 4 years on the school board, I ran for the city council reluctantly, I'll be honest. No offense, I think municipal government is great. Municipal government is great. I've learned a lot about municipal government, I've come to appreciate it, but education is my passion, if you can't tell. And people said to me, you know, I'd always thought, you know, the city doesn't really have that much to do with education. So, you know, there's really no point in me running for city council. And then a woman named Alexis Tamarone, who many of you know, asked me, you know, hey David, have you considered running for the Tempe City Council? And I said, you know, I hadn't really thought about it because, you know, I'm an education-focused person and I really want to focus on that. But she said, you know, municipal government is what you make it. Whatever your priority is, whatever your interests are, you can raise those things as issues at the city level of government. So when I first came on the council, I looked at our educational system in our community and I said, you know, are there ways that the city can get involved to help? Well, we have the largest university in the country, in the city of Tempe. Yeah. We have, we also have 6 high schools in the Tempe Union High School District, every one of which is A-rated. Wasn't that way before I was on the school board. I'm not taking credit for that, but we had some great folks, a great staff that has really done some incredible things in our district. Every high school in Tempe Union is A-rated. Kyrene Elementary School District, best elementary school district in the state bar none. Tempe Elementary School District is a Title I desegregation district, which, you know, that folks in education know what that means. It basically means a poor district, large number of minorities. Yet it's still one of the top performing elementary school districts in the state. So, you know, where are the holes, right? And so I was looking into what's going on in our schools and what our needs were in Tempe, and we came up with some really striking data that our city council was not aware of. First, in the city of Tempe, our child poverty rate among 3 and 4-year-olds had skyrocketed without us knowing. 40% of 3 and 4-year-olds living in our city were in poverty. 40%. We also learned that, and this has changed in the last few years, for those educators in the room, the Dibbles assessment that's done K through 3, which isn't a great assessment, but it is what it is. Only 1/3 of our kindergartners in the city of Tempe were meeting kindergarten readiness benchmarks. 1/3 were ready for kindergarten upon entering. And this is very simple. You know your alphabet, you know your colors, you know your numbers, you can write your name, and you have some socialization to be able to interact with your classmates. 1/3 and 40% in poverty. And so I said, we need to do something about this. So we looked at different preschool opportunities that were out there, just trying to find out where the disparities are. 80% of white kids in Tempe were going to preschool. 50% of black and Latino kids were going to preschool. And we wondered why there was an achievement gap between black and Latino kids and white kids. Well, the white kids were getting 2 more years of school in many cases. And so I said, well, we need to address this. And we have this child poverty rate of those 3 and 4-year-olds in poverty, 1,400 kids, only 250 of them were in preschool. And so we looked at the idea of investing in an early childhood education initiative. And in March of this year, I convinced my council colleagues to budget $6 million over the next 2 years to open 20 classrooms starting next month. 18 kids per classroom, 360 students starting in August, below 200% of the federal poverty level. And for the educators in the room, you're gonna get excited about this because it got me excited when we first got into the planning phase of this. This preschool program for 3 and 4-year-olds, full day, full year, certified teacher in every classroom, K-8 certified with early childhood endorsement, and a 9 to 1 student to adult ratio in every room. This is the Cadillac plan of preschool for kids in our community, and I can tell you, this is going to do wonders for these kids. And on Friday, I had my best day of public service ever because I got to call a bunch of these families and let them know that their kid had been selected for our preschool program. Best day of public service in my career. But that is the kind of leadership I believe that our Department of Education needs. We need to be moving in the right direction instead of continually stepping backwards. We need a superintendent of public instruction who's going to be an advocate for public schools. We need a superintendent who's going to hold the legislature accountable when they want to do corporate tax cuts at the same time as they cut education spending. We need a superintendent who's going to stand up and say, you know what? Sending sales tax measures to the ballot year after year after year to try and convince the voters that we've now adequately funded our education system is a lie. And that even though we passed Prop 301 and Prop 100 and Prop 123, Arizona's public schools have $1.1 billion less today than they had 9 years ago. We need a superintendent who's going to hold them accountable on every one of those fronts, who's going to lead a professional Department of Education that will provide quality professional development to our school districts, that will be a support instead of a hindrance to our education system in this state. And I'm so sick and tired of being dead last that I jumped into this race because I believe I can do those things at the Department of Education, but I need your help to get there. Next year, November 18 is this election against Donnie Douglas. But 2 years ago, a lot of you remember, David Garcia ran for superintendent. We lost that election by a percentage point. David Garcia won Maricopa County, he won Pima County, the 2 most populous counties, won Coconino County, but lost the election. Almost unprecedented for a Democrat. I recognize that we need a different strategy this time if we're going to win. And I think I can learn something from that race 2 years ago, and that is, we have to campaign not just in Maricopa County.
Thank you.
We have to ensure that kids and families, parents, and teachers in every corner of this state feel like the superintendent of public instruction will represent them and their school and their community and their children. And so I'm not just campaigning in every corner of the state because I want people to think that I'm a candidate who wants to win every county. I'm campaigning in every corner of the state because I want people to understand that I will be a superintendent that will represent every corner of Arizona. Because that is the job. That is the job, not just the great state of Maricopa. You have to represent all of Arizona. I'm running as a clean elections candidate. It's a philosophical thing for me. I believe deeply in a clean election system. I tried to get one passed in Tempe. We're still working on it. I need one more vote to get it done. I ran clean every time I ran for the legislature. It's a great opportunity to be able to run for office and to not have to owe anybody anything, but to be able to just represent your constituents, you know? So I'm running clean this time, but there's a difficulty of running clean, and that is the Republicans have made it very hard. We can't even start collecting those $5 contributions until August, which means we won't be able to turn them in. We got to get 1,500 of those. We won't be able to turn them in until the end of the year or the start of next year. That means 6 months from now will be my first chance at getting clean elections funding to be able to run my campaign. But as you can tell, we're out around the state. We were in Sedona at lunch. We were in Flagstaff this morning. We'll be in Window Rock on Wednesday. We'll be in Holbrook later that day. We're all over the state right now, 16 months out, because that's what it's going to take for a progressive person to win statewide office in Arizona. I know that because I ran Terry Goddard's campaign for Attorney General back in 2002, and he got more votes than any Democrat had ever gotten in any race in Arizona in history. So I know that we got to start early. So the only way we can put gas in the tank for the next 6 months until we got our clean elections funding is the clean election system allows you to raise what's called seed money. And in order to raise seed money, you can collect contributions from individual donors. The limit that each person can give you is $160, and we can raise $28,000 that way, which will help us put gas in the tank between now and January. But I need your help to do that. We don't raise money from corporations or lobbyists or PACs. It's real people. And so if you are able to contribute anything to our campaign, up to $160, please raise your hand now. Austin will come by, he'll bring you a contribution envelope. We really, really appreciate your support so we can get gas in the tank the next 6 months. Raise your hand and keep it up if you're able to help us do that over the next 6 months, and Austin will come by with an envelope. The last thing I want to say before I take a few questions